Real people with real voices telling very real stories. Brought to you by Getting Ready for Life. Welcome again to another edition of She Doesn't Even Go Here, and it's a special one tonight. It's a deep dive, if you will, into education. Are we going to burn down the system, or are we going to keep it as it is? Do we need to tweak it a little bit? Don't forget, all this brought to you by Getting Ready for Life. We've got a big panel with some familiar faces and some new faces, and we'll go around. But our producers joined us tonight. A bit of an ego trip for Paige, who's usually making sure everything's organised. Good evening to you, Paige, producer. But you've also, I know that you've got some really strong opinions, so I look forward to hearing some of those. Hello, Carolyn. You're a parent. Well done, you.
Thank you.
Who else we got? Soph. Hello, Soph, for the first time. Sophie Stafford from Swinburne. That's a lovely. That's what is it? What do you call it when you get alliteration? SS Sophie Stafford from Swinburne. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Yep, I often trip people up when I call them and say, hi, it's Sophie Stafford from Swinburne. And they go, who? From where?
Well, it's just super to hear from you. Hello, hello, Dean James from Brimbank City Council. Thank you for joining us. And I'm led to believe from City Council point of view, you're the face of the organisation. So good to have you along.
You'd hope not. There's a lot of other better people who could be the face of Brimbank.
Well, look, I find you particularly fetching, but really appreciate it. And it's been a pretty testing time for you guys. I want to talk to you a little bit about that. Dr. Glen, yay!
Hello.
Oh, well, it's good to see you anyway, buddy.
Great to see you. Great to be back.
Haven't seen you for a little while. I look forward to, given the, does anybody feel like we're living in a Salvador Dali painting at the moment, or an MC Escher painting where just everything's just not right anymore? It looks normal, but it's actually not. Glen, Dr. Glen, I reckon you're going to have a lot of work to do. You're a clinical psychologist, and I'm sure they'll be beating down the door to work this out. Some of our good people. It's been a really challenging time, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, completely challenging. Lots of activation or reactivation of challenging mental health experiences as a result of something that we're still trying to get our heads around.
And there is so much to unpack with that, because I think we could all probably testify to the fact that it's hitting people emotionally in all sorts of ways. I'll go down to the bottom of the screen. We've got a year. What year are you? Hello, Lloyd E.
Hey, how you doing, Becky?
You're well, mate?
Yeah, I'm doing well, mate.
I know you're a little bit nervous, but you don't appear to be. I reckon you've got superstar in the making as well. Disney Channel might be watching. They'll pick you up for their next mini-series. Now, what year are you in, my friend?
Year 9.
Year 9. So we'll be able to draw on your experience about the lockdown, and, of course, arch enemy, nemesis. No, she's not. Hello, Tash. How are you? Great footballing talent from Heidelberg United, Alexander Soccer Club, but as well as that, she's a lovely, lovely person. She's always been a friend of ours. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good as well. How do I look? I'm awesome, right? You know, you can't beat being me. You know, only by a long shot. What's this? I'm going to go with you first of all, Tash, because we followed your journey. You were with us for our very first program. I just want to quickly ask you, the whole chessboard changed again during the week, or even yesterday, I think it was, where all of a sudden we've got lockdown zones, and your season, I understand it, is now on hold as a footballer anyway, for the second time.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still going ahead with training, and I hope we are. And there are some people that aren't allowed to come to training due to being in hotspots and their lockdown zones, but I kind of live on the other side of Victoria, so I'm not too affected by it. So I'm kind of
so you're looking down from the lofty vantage point of being able to play a round of golf without getting a smack of a $300 1,000 fine or whatever they do. You're watching She Doesn't Even Go here, unpacking education. Now, we were a little bit unfortunate with the timing of the show because we were hoping to get some of our great teachers on, but they're, of course, on holiday. So that leaves us with open slather to either bring down the system or tell us where we need to tweak it. Paige, I'll go to you first because during the journey of us working on She Doesn't Even Go Here, you've expressed some really strong opinions about education, where it's going and what needs to be fixed. How about we start with you and see if you can burn the house down straight away?
Oh, look, well, I've got 3 sons, 2 of whom have finished school, who are bright, intelligent, great kids, but school just did nothing for them. And I look at it and I think, the world is their oyster, and yet they've come out with no passion, no direction. And it was something one of our guests earlier on said, school should be this place that brings out the best in our kids and helps them discover who they are and what they love out of life and sets them on a path. And I can look at it and say, well, it certainly failed the older 2 at this point, and I'm sure they'll find it on their own. But, all the time that they've invested in going to school, one would have hoped as a parent that it would have helped them discover that. And the passion and that sort of thing is, to me, what's missing.
Lloyd, are you finding your passion at your age level at school? And I know it's a tough question, but I speak to a lot of young people. I work in schools a lot, and I think that would be a fair example of what we're trying to talk about, is that the system is structured in such a way that discovering what you really want to be and what you're going to be awesome at, which you no doubt will, how does that fit into your schooling, Lloyd?
Well, it's very, 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 very weird. I think school's very, sorry, I'm a bit nervous. What was your question again?
I appreciate your honesty. Are you finding your passion at school, or are you just going through the motions?
I'm really not. I've had to, do it on my own. Like, I've been interested in, video game designing and that kind of stuff. But there is like IT at school, which is one teacher that doesn't even know how to do IT, and there's like the music teacher doesn't know, doesn't even know how to do it. But yeah, school's very uninspired. We do the same thing every single year at my school. I've done it since year 7. And it's
So it's not really structured to find out who is Lloyd and where is he going and what does he want to do in life. Would that be fair?
It really isn't like structured like that.
So I'll go to you, Tash, because you're a couple of years advanced. You're in year 12. Now, we've spoken to you a couple of times. I know you. I know your sense of humour. I know you're intelligent. You're quick-witted. You go to school. You're probably achieving at school. But have you found things inside you through school that give you really solid direction? Is school equipped to give you that sort of passion?
Look, I really think it depends on the individual. School is really based on, you learn something and you apply it. Whereas a lot of people don't work like that. I know I don't work like that. I need to work through things and real life situations, stuff like that. Personally, at my school, I think as you grow older, you kind of get the opportunity to, dip your finger in different fields and all that and have a taste of everything and try to figure out what you like to do. But I don't think there's enough variety in schools. A lot of the schools do the same 4 staple subjects, and there might be a school here or there that offers something different, and one school doesn't necessarily offer the same things as another school. And I just think depending where you go, what school you go to, you're like kind of capped to what you can learn and how you can like advance through life and figure out what you like to do.
I think schools are, well, it's designed on a system that's about 140 years old. It was developed in England back before the Industrial Revolution, and it was still working to the same mainframe to this very day. I'm going to go to you, Dean, because you're nodding your head alongside my comments just then. You see the after effects, don't you, of young people, particularly in the Western region, which is desperately, desperately tough on young men when they exit school. You see the after effects of a system that's not really equipped to bring these young men through with goals and drive and passion about where they want to go in life. Would that be fair?
I think I've come from Hume City Council before I was at Brimbank, so same thing happens in the north. You get a lot of young men who there's no passion to learn. It's that you have to learn maths or English, but there's no reality as to where you would use that. So young people don't have passion for learning because they can't see a future in it. And that's across the border, not just isolated to the West. And for young men who tend to learn better with their hands, school just doesn't sort of cut it with everybody. It's a challenging space.
I'm going to come back to you, and I want to ask you a question in a minute or two. If you can I'd love to hear your point of view. If you could address one issue in schools in the Western region or the Northern region, what might you do? Sophie Stafford from Swinburne, with her electrifying bob there, is looking sensational. So you see, now you're young yourself, but you're also seeing, working at Swinburne, a lot of young people coming out of secondary college into Swinburne. Tell me about your reflections on the calibre of young people that are coming out of high school and into tertiary education at Swinburne.
I think one of the things that I probably noticed most in my role as a placement coordinator is that for kids or young adults who are fresh out of high school, often there's a huge culture shock coming into that adult learning environment. And often the biggest, I guess, obstacle for them is understanding how systems work. So understanding how to maybe enroll into units or how to search their timetable, how to ask questions and who to ask questions of. And what I see a lot with students is they just tend to sit back a little bit and just wait for the information to come at them. But then the information comes at them a little bit hard and fast sometimes, so they almost glaze over and don't absorb it. So I think particularly during this shutdown time where we've shifted to an online learning module, what I've noticed most in terms of inquiries from my students tend to be more about questions around their own well-being in relation to their study and their learning and their placements throughout this time. And I'm seeing that they are really needing a lot of reassurance around maybe information that someone with more experience might just be able to easily source for themselves.
You touched on an interesting point. I'm losing my voice and I don't know why. I think it's because I'm so excited about working with all you guys. I'm going to go to you, Carolyn, if I may. Now, Sophie Stafford from Swinburne, alliteration at its best. Sophie Stafford has pointed out the information, for example, for young people. Now, I'm just going to pose a question to you as a parent. Do you think it's the emphasis or the lack of emphasis on practical things like doing your taxes, how to vote, how the electoral system works, and how to approach the manager of a store in a courteous way to get information, all these practical things that we learn in life that aren't gifted us at school. Now, I've always felt that there is a huge lacking there, because as soon as they hit the adult world, it's like WTF,
Yes, look, there's definitely a lot of subjects and learning that happens at school that's just completely useless. I know my daughter, when she was doing French in Year 12, she said that all the French was completely useless in terms of going overseas to France because they were learning about the environment in French. So it was almost like they were trying to put two subjects into one, rather than how to order something at a restaurant, how to speak to people, in normal everyday language. That would have been far more useful than, because there's nothing that she will even remember in French to do with the environment.
That's an interesting one, because I know you sort of touched on it, Dean. And by the way, French, quelle surprise. Who's going to use French these days? Dean, quelle surprise means, I don't know what it means.
Oh,
Dean,
hang on. It's a very sexy language, though. I do like French. French accent, you know.
Voici Grégoire. Je m'appelle. That's it. I'm done now.
It could actually be useful, you know, a bit of a pickup, you know. French accent.
Wow, did we just cheapen the brand? You're watching she doesn't even go here. Brought to you by Getting Ready for Life, deep dive into education.
Real people with real voices telling very real stories.
Brought to you by Getting Ready for Life. Dean, I'll just ask you, because we're talking about French ecological studies. I mean, hello, and you were mentioning, and you were mentioning, you know, the subject matter that's not contextualised for young people as they go along the journey, which I think is I've always felt that's a bit of a theme too. We teach young people in the system where if they tick the right boxes at the exam, they know the subject, and that just doesn't correlate with the idea of having deep subject matter that you can apply to things.
I don't think they don't teach really how to learn. So for every different person, it's a different way of learning. So they're not instilling passion in learning, or, you know, for different people how to learn. I think that's important. What you learn changes for your lifestyle. Like everything I learned at school, I wouldn't know now. You know, in year 9, you're asked to pick what subjects you want to do for the career you want. I'm 50, I still don't know what I want to do. So I think they're trying to get young people to actually be adults too soon without giving them the skills to do that. It's interesting, Sophie's point about students going to university, not being able to ask questions. That's just a given. You would think that at some point at 17, 18, they would have been given skills to actually be able to formulate a question, be able to ask a question and be happy if they're not going to get the right result. And they're not. What we're seeing with young men is they can't ask questions, they can't express themselves. There's it's 0 to 100 for young men. So when they don't get the answer they want, they go straight to anger without teaching young people how to formulate a question, how to actually articulate themselves properly, and be happy not getting your answer sometimes. I think that needs to be looked at.
School's very passive from what I can see. Well,
you can't ask a question.
And even, you know, and I know a lot of front office staff, a young student walks into the front office and they get yelled at.
They do.
You know, this is not the environment to be bringing our young people up so they've got the confidence. And I know with my eldest, he's gone out into the workforce and he's been taken advantage of, and he's got a mum particularly that can say to him, hey, this isn't okay. This is not the right way, that you shouldn't be being treated this way. Yet I can't march into the manager's office and do that for him. He doesn't have you know, he's very well spoken, he's very intelligent, but he doesn't have the skills and capacities to go in and speak up for himself. And these are important skills.
I don't want Dr. Glen, who's my very favourite human being on earth, to feel left out, but I do want to go back down to Tash and Lloyd first of all, and I'll go youngest to more senior. Lloyd, I'll ask you the question. Do you feel empowered in the school environment, the formal school environment, to ask questions or challenge teachers on subject matter or discussion points? Do you feel that you're in a position to have robust debate about things that you might feel are not necessarily what you wish to learn or how you wish to learn?
No, we don't feel like empowered at all. I've tried to spark discussions to my teachers, but like I've been shut down immediately. We have a pastoral care Voyager. We learn about like ethics and different religions and society and that kind of stuff. But if you like disagree with something, the teacher will just like not acknowledge you, or just they won't acknowledge anything if you try to speak up. And yeah, as Paige was saying, with going to the office and getting yelled at, that happens a lot.
Getting yelled at.
Yeah, it's not very nice.
It's a great system, very human. Tash, quickly to you. Again, you're a learned person, as I understand it. If you delve into subject matter, whatever that may be, whether it's politics or whatever it might be, do you feel free to have a different opinion to school staff and to teachers? Do you feel free to speak up and say, hang on a minute, I don't necessarily agree?
Look, I know a lot of my friends don't have that like freedom to do that, and that they don't feel comfortable to do that. But to be honest, I'm a bit of a smartass. So,
Well, by a bit, you mean you measure off the charts, but yeah, you are.
I know personally, it's just my personality. I like to butt heads with anybody I can find to butt heads with. So if I disagree with something, I'm, going to stick to my guns and argue with my teachers if I need to, or, try to get my point across to try to get people to see my point.
Was that a developmental process, though, from a younger age at school, or did you just walk in there trying to kick heads?
Maybe it's a soccer thing.
Bit of arrogance, I think. I don't know. I think I've always been like that, but that's personally just me.
Yeah.
It's not everybody, yeah.
Dr. Glen, you are, without a doubt, the most accomplished young man that I've ever met. There is no doubt. and you have a hairstyle to die for. But as a young bloke, I mean, your process as a young bloke, you came through the high school system. Is there a similarity with what you're hearing now and what I'm trying to get at? Have things changed at all? Have they gone backwards? What's your thoughts?
Look, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think there's a few things in what we're talking about here that can be useful and kind of important. And I suppose one of the sort of things that, we started talking about not instilling a sense of passion in kids, and this kind of, one size or maybe, a small number of sizes fits everyone kind of thing. And then we have people like Dean was saying who perhaps fall beneath the cracks. And one of the things maybe that we're seeing over the last 3 or 4 months with schools having to adapt the way in which they teach people is that might not necessarily mean that we kind of change this way, but at least it does show that there is the capacity for flexibility in the way things are done and the way in which teaching is done and the way in which schools kind of operate. But then we go on to this point of, I suppose, teaching critical thinking. And if we think of the skills as an adult that really helps you the most, it is one of the really important ones, I think, is the ability to be able to look at something and think about it in a kind of critical kind of way. And sometimes, I've kind of heard this sort of thing that, primary school teaches someone to read, high school teaches someone to read with understanding, and university teaches someone to read with a critical kind of eye. But I think that there's nothing to say that why can't that be brought back? Why, if we're kind of hearing some of these things and these sort of stories whereby people don't feel like we're kind of encouraging that kind of critical discussion about things. And I think that, in my experience of working with young people, when they do that, sometimes they're kind of given a label of being kind of a troublemaker and then placated or disciplined or kind of moved out of school because it probably is easier for staff. I don't think there's a broad brush approach to this. I'm sure there are some staff who relish in that opportunity to talk with their students in a kind of critical sort of way. But I guess a lot of the time there are kind of outcomes that all schools have to try and achieve and curriculum that they have to kind of meet and a score that's got to be achieved at the end of it, which, and maybe this lovely idea of fostering an element of critical thinking kind of gets thrown down the priority list.
I think it kind of does sometimes, doesn't it, Dr. Glen? You were nodding your head furiously again down there in the middle, Dean. Your thoughts about young people that are just being funneled in a one-size-all system, and that doesn't help in any way, does it?
No, and I think it is the system. Teachers have to teach to a certain extent. They have a curriculum they've got to get through. So if you had a class of 25 to 30 students who all wanted to point across, I think it would be a difficult space to be. And with online learning over the last 3 months, and I've got a 13 and a 10-year-old, I can see where some teachers might struggle.
Yeah.
We've had some great teachers along the way on the show.
Oh, yeah.
They're passionate and they want to reach kids. Yet they're working within these constraints. They've got to tick boxes. And I know, I'm still in touch with some of the primary teachers of my older two, and we have a lot of conversations about these sorts of things, and they can't teach the way that they used to teach maybe 20 years ago. They don't have time. There's just too much. The curriculum's crowded. And, you know, the pressure on them. Like, if we gave teachers room to be excited, because we want to have young people that are excited about life and their learning and their education and exploring these things. So it's not the teachers themselves, it's the system, you know, and we've got people making up these rules, but the system itself, but they've got no idea about kids. They're sitting in a government office somewhere, and unfortunately, they're not the ones on the front line, and they're not listening to the teachers, you know?
Yeah, and I find it, I've got about 20 years and 15 schools in the region that I've been involved in, and the staff, the teachers are generally passionate and really wanting outcomes. But I struggle with the system, and I'll put this out to everybody. Is the system going to work if it's developed along the lines of a prison system? You ring the bell for lunch, you need permission to go to the toilet, you have to be wearing the correct shoes, you have to, you know, yes sir, no sir. I don't think that's conducive to positive learning for young people. Furthermore, I've always wondered about if you're homeschooling your child, okay, and you start them at 9 in the morning, and then at 9:40 you end geography and they have to move to another room to do 40 minutes of maths and then move to another room. That's completely incongruous with a healthy learning environment. Just my thoughts. I'll put it out there. Ride the pony with me, anyone.
Well, one of the things that I might say about that is that, sometimes I've found that people that I've worked with that have really struggled with that kind of, you call it a prison system, but let's say a structured system, have really flourished when they've gone to environments where there's a lot more flexibility. And there are environments like perhaps Sophie knows, like Swinburne Senior Secondary College, which lots of people that have had, difficulties being in that kind of environment have really flourished in those kinds of places where they have perhaps less of that kind of rigidity and more flexibility, and perhaps is run a little bit more like a university where people can come and go when they have classes and have a more personal relationship with their teachers.
My son worked at a school that was a bit like a Hitler's camp, and
you've gone right over the line. I just went with prison, but anyway.
And he really struggled. Like he went in as a very confident, very happy little preppy, and he came out without any motivation. He was just not very happy. Didn't really enjoy school. Enjoyed his social friends, but not school itself. But as a uni student, he's doing remarkably well. So he, he's very much about self-learning. He's very much about learning what he wants to learn rather than having something forced down his throat. The competitiveness at some of these schools is a problem, I think. It should be a system of cooperation, not competitiveness. I mean, competitiveness on the soccer field, sure, but in the schoolroom, I think kids would flourish with a bit more cooperation.
Yeah. I want to go with that. If you don't mind, I want to go to Dean again, and then I want to go to Sophie. I've got about 9 million questions, and they're all banking up in the back of my head. Dean, you work with young men that have probably taken the wrong trail every now and then at some point. Now, you and I both know, anybody that's worked in a school, for example, knows that the young people, particularly the young men who are earmarked as being beyond the pale, or beyond hope, you'll have Maths A, Advanced Maths, Maths B, and then catch-up Maths or some crap. Yeah. They know when they're in that class that they have been marginalised already. It's not spoken, but they know that, don't they? And they start to act out.
We've so I've been at Brimbank for about a year now. For the first 3 months, we had 3 referrals from one of the schools, and all of them were VCAL students, and all of them were told, you can't do VCE. You won't pass, go and do VCAL. Straight away, those kids lost motivation in life, let alone education. I mean, I think the message you give a student from a teacher or from anyone is very important. You need to build them up, not knock them down. Yeah, I can't really say much more than that.
Young people are weighed, and it was put to me once by a teacher that in the school community, and they are school communities, the teachers get together and talk and socialise, and they will, well, it's been said to me anecdotally that every young person in a school environment has been weighed and measured as what their capabilities are and where they're going by year 10. Sophie Stafford, you have nodded more than any other guest on this show. Since we started, you are the nodding queen right now. What's your thoughts on where we're going?
Well, I think, first of all, from the perspective of a parent, my son went through a private secondary school for boys, and he could never find a teacher who could help him make the connection between the work they were doing and the skill he would gain from it. And so in Year 9, they were told they had to make a comic book. And he said, I don't like drawing. I'm not imaginative. When I go into my career, and he knew what he wanted to do, he wanted to go into IT, how is this helping me? And the teacher said, it's helping you because you need to get a mark and you need to pass this class. And so I think that takes the agency out of it for the learner, because they suddenly have no investment in what they're doing. It's just about ticking boxes. And so for my son, he sort of, plodded through, and then he did VCAL in Year 11, and they did a lot of busy work. So VCAL to me is an enormous opportunity to teach practical skills, but instead what they were doing was just keeping them busy so that they could get their Year 12 pass. And for Marlon, that created so much boredom, and he felt so disenfranchised. It was a really lonely time for him. So by Year 12, we decided to put him into a TAFE to do his final year of VCAL. And the second we got him into an adult learning environment, he flourished. He absolutely thrived. And he walked straight out of VCAL and into a job because he'd been doing work experience, and then his, vet component of his course in this same company. And he's now been there since he was 15, and he's 23 now, and he's absolutely killing it at life.
Real people with real voices telling very real stories.
Brought to you by Getting Ready for Life. Lloyd, I'd like to ask you a question. I am now your teacher, your English teacher in year, what was it again? Where are you? Year
9.
Year 9, great year. Year 9, it's just better than 8 by 1 and nearly 10, which is terrific. I don't know where that was going. You're watching, she doesn't even go here. I've got a question for you. Do you like English? Do you like learning the language thereof?
I like reading. I like writing, even I'm not very good at it. But it's very repetitive. Every single year we do the exact same thing, and it's very, very, very boring.
One of the bugbears I've always had is, for example, with English, because I'm a big, I'm a grammar Nazi, really, to most extent. One thing that's always confounded me is how some ponytailed nitwit in Canberra comes up every year with a book list for every young person at every year level in Australia. So a young bloke like Lloyd, who's down there right now. Lloydie, would you rather, now what's your favourite, you like gaming, don't you? Electronic games, which you need to avoid because that'll turn you into some sort of serial killer. Apparently there's a correlation, that's not true. Is if I'm your English teacher and I give you a copy of Anna Karenina or Jane Eyre, and you look at it and go, why would I be reading that? Wouldn't you sooner have your English classes crafted around the things you're interested in? You're gonna gobble up a gaming magazine, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. I prefer not this structured, like you said, like prison learning, where we learn certain things that aren't tailored to our likings and our strengths. Because I said this maybe last month to someone. I said learning is just like a land or something, and school is like this narrow little corridor with only 3 doors that you can go through, and there's millions of possibilities and millions of things you can learn, but they've structured it so then it's very linear.
Well, you are a learned man. You sound like a Lewis Carroll book there for a minute. Tash, You still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here.
I was saying to you, and again, I know you're a pretty well-rounded person, but is the system, what can we do to change the system right now as you come out of year 12 to make it more user-friendly for young people coming through, instead of falling under the thrall of my ATAR score is my life? What can we do to get young people to love subjects that they're I know it's a big question, but when I was at school, I wanted to love what I was learning, and I just didn't.
Yeah, I think more choice needs to be given to students, especially in those younger years. So as they grow, they understand what they like to learn, how they like to learn, stuff like that. I think choice is a really big issue within schools, as you know, everything is structured and everything is either this or that. There's no in between. It's either black or white, so I think choice is a really big thing that needs to be given to students so they understand what they like. I had another point, but it's just slipped my mind.
Oh, I've never seen you so fragile, Tash. I'm enjoying the moment. Come back to us when you have a clue, will you? Dr. Glen, now, how long ago were you at high school, just approximately? Because I don't want to age you. You look about 21, but
25 years.
Let me ask you. I mean, you and I are very kindred souls in as much as we both love sort of live theatre, for example, and musicals. But there's several things. When I was at high school, I felt like I could never actually be who I was and embrace the lifestyle of being at school. I know that sounds really weird, but I think a lot of young people are ostracized because they just don't fit that mold. It's like, it's the group speak thing that, all young blokes are the same, all young women are the same. But it's not the case. You're so hard. You're trying to find yourself as well.
Yeah, look, I think that certainly from my experience at school, in the 90s, it was certainly a real homogenous package, and I went to school in the country, and so it was kind of like really small, and our year level was pretty tiny, and there was a lot of sameness kind of there, and expectations for everyone to sort of be very similar. I mean, perhaps Lloyd and Tash could perhaps talk about how their experience is like in terms of perhaps acceptance of a little bit more diversity and difference, and people being, able to say, I don't feel like I want to go down this track or have this particular kind of thing as, part of my education. I want to do kind of something else. But with young people that I work with, certainly most of the work that I do is more kind of inner city, and I've certainly seen evidence of what we're talking about, that people, okay, if you're not going to get this kind of score, then you should do an ungraded pass, or you should go to VCAL or something else. And I think that that's partially motivated by the school not wanting to affect their overall results at the end of the year. That's only my view. That's not an official.
I'm right there with you. I'm riding the same horse right now. Sorry?
No, I just wanted to throw that in when you bring that up, Dr. Glen, is, our schools, their only interest should be the well-being and the education of our young people. So to me, there is this huge conflict of interest that they're trying to compete themselves. And we're saying before that schools shouldn't be a competition or that sort of stuff, where, all this, NAPLAN testing, all that stuff. The schools are being graded. So it's all a flow on. It comes to the top down, and it ends up the kids are the ones that are disadvantaged. So
we've set up a system whereby that is kind of the way in which people are benchmarked.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And similar in university systems as well. Universities, work in university system, and there's frequent kind of benchmarking, everything from jobs that people get to how much staff publish to how many students they can kind of let in and graduate every year.
Tremendous. We're doing a great job, aren't we, so far? Carolyn, I reckon the interesting one, don't you, is take aside the education element, but the great anomaly of be unique, be yourself, find the best you, but make sure you've got the uniform on, the right shoes, and you think the way that everybody else does. I find that really difficult there's a word there, but I can't remember it. I'll hand it. Yeah, that's teach uniqueness, but require conformity. Ridiculous.
Well, I mean, the thing too is that, you know, everyone is an individual, and I've only got questions and I don't have the answers for, you know, what to do. But there's even different types of learning with children. So, for instance, my son, very kinesthetic. So when he learns, he paces. But he wasn't allowed to be, you know, he's not allowed to be fidgety in school because you've got other learners that, you know, need the peace and quiet. I'm that type of learner. I need peace and quiet. So I'd be distracted by the fidgeter. And then you've got a child like my daughter, kinesthetic visual, but she, you know, she has to write everything out. She's very, she's slower to process things. So she'll get HDs on all her assignments, but come to exams, she can run out of time because she's so detailed and sort of methodical in everything that she does, but she just doesn't have the time to always sort of complete it. So we've got this one size fits all for education. And like I say, I don't have the answers. There's, you know, it's probably going to cost too much money to have all the teachers that can do all the things for these, you know, for each individual student to make it right for everyone. And like, let's face it, one of the funniest things, my son was really good at sport, right? And so all the academic students that weren't good at sport could go to sports day with a note saying, you know, I'm not able to participate. My son couldn't go to school and, you know, hand over a note to say, I can't participate in English because, you know, I actually find it really hard. So, you know, this is what I mean by the one size fits all. And I'm not saying that English isn't important. It is an important subject. But, you know, he had to suffer through, you know, through that. Whereas, the academic kids, you know, just came to school with a note and not participate in sports. So
it's a really interesting observation. I want to go to you, Sophie Stafford from Swinburne again. Lovely alliteration and a lovely bangs as well. I think I've mentioned that twice, but I'm old and I just ramble on and continue on. Doesn't matter. So I want to ask you, another thing I've found is that there are so many, and we're talking, set aside again the education, but the personalities of young people coming through the school system. And they literally are, what's Greece? What's his name? The bloke in Greece, John Travolta, that sort of character who's too cool for school. And there's the nerds and the flying under the radars, and there's the cheerleaders. And these are not caricatures. They come out of school with personalities developed on their school experience, then hit the real world, and the cool kid finds out he's probably not, and the nerd finds him. Do you find it an interesting and a challenge to watch their development moving out of the characters that they were at high school into the adults they're going to be?
Definitely. And I think one of the great things about the courses that I look after in particular, I work in, even though I work for the uni, I work in the TAFE side of things. So I look after students who are doing diplomas and certificate level courses. And the great thing about that is we have a really mixed bag in terms of age demographics. And so it can be quite daunting, I think, for students who are fresh out of high school coming into an environment where they might be learning with someone who's had a corporate career for the last 20 years and they've decided that they want to change their life and learn a new skill and have a new profession, who are confident, who are able to ask questions, who are able to question things that are told to them. And I think particularly in some of our programs that are quite academic, what can happen is we have some really tall poppies who come in from high school. They've had a good high school experience. They're very confident, and very quickly that confidence can be knocked because the environment is so different. And I think one of the things that I love the best is part of my role, I get to go into classrooms and talk to students about placement and the placement experience. And so I get to see how each teacher teaches differently. And one of my favourite things is walking into one of our community services classrooms with a beautiful teacher named Janet, and she moves the classroom around. As soon as the students come in, she puts them in a big circle rather than, rows of desks where you're sitting at the back of someone's head usually. And she has these really open conversations. So instead of teaching at them, she discusses concepts with them, and it's always really empowering to see how much that can make all of the students in the classroom come out of their shell.
We are on She Doesn't Even Go here, brought to you by Getting Ready for Life. Tonight is a deep dive into education. Great night, great panel, robust discussion, plenty of good ideas. Stay with us, won't you, for She Doesn't Even Go Here's Deep Dive into Education, Part 2 next week. We'll see you then. Ringing a bell. That's a school bell, by the way. I'm getting ready. Are you getting ready? We're all getting ready. We're all getting ready.
For life.
Brought to you by Getting Ready for Life.
Stop smiling! Stop laughing!